Hello and welcome to another An Old Man Watches. And today I'm going to be talking about American Beauty from 1999. And in this film, we meet 42-year-old Lester Burnham, who is trapped in a loveless, sexless marriage and has a teenage daughter whose main emotion towards him is contempt and is working in a job that he loathes. So, basically nothing is coming up roses for Mr. Burnham, Lester. And we have joined him just as he decides, I've had all I can stand and I can't stand no more. Or, words to that effect. He contrives to blackmail his employer into giving him a pretty nice severance package. He gets a job slinging burgers at the local fast food place. And, he starts buying pot from the kid next door. Not your usual midlife crisis, I would say, but certainly something of one. Now, Lester seems much more content and happier with his life after doing all of this, but his wife and daughter, especially his wife, are less than thrilled. They are also both experiencing tumultuous times of their own, as are the family's new neighbours, and sooner or later everything that's going on is sure to boil over in some way or another, and basically you're watching the movie to see how that happens. So American Beauty was a commercial success, taking in over 20 times its budget in ticket sales, and a critical one as well. As you can see from the image, it won 5 Oscars, and they weren't little Oscars either. It was Best Picture, Best Director, Best Male Actor in a Leading Role, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Cinematography. So a huge critical and commercial success. A huge critical and commercial success that has to some extent been overtaken by events since then, and that I can't talk about this film without talking about them. So let's kick off with the Kevin Spacey question. So Lester is played by Kevin Spacey, and these days Mr. Spacey is basically persona non grata in Hollywood due to allegations of sexual assault against younger men. That has to complicate the experience of watching this movie. Now, it's far from the first time we've had to deal with the problem of high-profile men across all of society. This is not just a Hollywood thing, but across all of society, high-profile men abusing, and it's almost always men, abusing their power. It's not a new thing, but it is an unusual case in the perpetrator faced a significant social backlash. There are far too many other cases of people making excuses for powerful men who have done the wrong thing. Just look at Roman Polanski's many defenders over the year. Accused of essentially the same thing, though at a much earlier date, and with a young woman rather than a young man. But over the years, plenty of people have spoken up to make excuses for Roman Polanski, which they shouldn't. I want to be really clear. Don't make excuses for sexual assault against minors. Now, pleasingly, it does seem there's been some progress more broadly towards demanding more accountability these days, as in the case of Harvey Weinstein. But this is a factor in watching the film. If Kevin Spacey being in this movie means you can't bring yourself to watch it, that is a perfectly valid position to have. I don't know that I would rewatch the movie if he was going to get money from it. I mean, I own it on DVD already, so my watching it, doesn't impact him getting any money. But yeah, if it's a factor for you and you choose not to watch the movie for that reason and that reason alone, that is a perfectly valid reason not to watch the film. It doesn't mean you're wrong if you do choose to watch it. It just means that, that is a valid choice for those people who make it. Secondly, I first saw this movie when it came out. So 1999, 2000, one of those 2 years. This is when I first saw this movie. I was in my mid-20s at the time, whereas today, obviously, I'm now older than Lester is in the film. And I definitely had a different experience of the movie at those different ages. Now that I'm older, I found myself sympathising more with Lester's daughter and her initial contempt for her father than I did originally. When I was younger, I had more sympathy for Lester. What that says about me, about how I've changed, don't know. And watching it in my 40s, I had a more negative reaction to the characters in general than I originally did. I was less willing to forgive them for their actions. So, while Lester makes a lot of changes in his life that are positive for him, and as a 20-something, my reaction was, yeah, go Lester, do what's right for you. In my 40s, I did notice how, you are a husband and a father, and you are, acting in a way that is hurtful to the people to whom you have a duty in your life. And yes, I understand that your marriage is sexless and loveless, and but there are better ways of dealing with that than the way you have chosen. And at the end of the day, you have a child and you owe them a responsibility. Now, Lester is far from being alone and having bad points. Pretty much every character in this movie is deeply flawed in one way or another. And as a 20-something, I was either more willing to overlook those failings or more willing to accept them. And maybe that's because back then I felt less content and solid in my own person, and so I was more willing to accept the failings of others because it excused my own failings. Whether it's something else, I don't know, but it's definitely a different experience. I think that whatever your first viewing experience of American Beauty, it might be worth seeing again a decade or more later to see how your impressions change. Certainly they did for me, and perhaps I'll give that a try myself in another 10 or 15 years. Or maybe I won't. I think it will probably come down to how I feel about the Kevin Spacey question at the time. Finally, I guess, if I was going to make an argument for why you should see this movie despite Kevin Spacey, I would say this. Everyone who won an Academy Award for American Beauty was a man, but there's an awesome, there's awesome female talent in this movie. And so it's a bit ironic that everyone who won an Academy Award for the film was male. So number one, American Beauty features the always reliable Annette Bening as Lester's wife. Bening did actually get an Oscar nomination for the film. She lost out to Hilary Swank's performance in Boys Don't Cry, which, okay, fair enough. That's a fair decision. But I've never seen Bening give a bad performance, and she is every bit as good as usual in this. The film also features Mena Severa, who's gone on to a strong career over the subsequent 2 decades, and a very young Thora Birch. I have seen Thora Birch give a bad performance. She somehow ended up in the Dungeons & Dragons movie, which is not a project where anyone looked good, but she's certainly capable of giving very good performance as well, and this film is a case in point. So while I understand if you're put off of this film by its leading man, I guess perhaps also consider the awesome women in it as a counterbalancing factor. So that's American Beauty. A lot of discussion about stuff that isn't necessarily on the screen, but we don't watch films in isolation of society, much though some do-bros would like us to pretend that we do, so that we can overlook stuff. No, we don't, and we shouldn't. So I thought that those factors were worth talking about with this film. Next time, something a lot more light, cheesy 1980s post-apocalyptica in the form of Cherry 2000, starring Melanie Griffith, which was a film set in the then far future of 2017. Needless to say, the 2017 the film presents looks nothing like the 2017 we actually had, but that's part of the charm of watching old post-apocalyptica. In any case, that's next time. Thanks for watching this video, and hope you tune in for me to talk about Cherry 2000.